Hi, this is Anne Marie, and you are listening to Achieve Self Improvement Holistic Radio. And today we are getting into the paranormal and to a very interesting woman from the UK that has haunted histories to talk about how she got into it all. She has a very popular podcast, and she is an author of 3 books. Penny, how are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good. I was wondering how does a person like you um, get into all of this? You started out as a um, what not an investigator, but as a researcher?
Sort of. Yeah. I mean, I think the paranormal and the history side had both been running parallel for quite some time in my life. There'd been blips when I thought, no, I'm going to be normal. I'm going to get a normal job. I'm going to dress normally. I'm going to sort of hide the fact I like tattoos and heavy metal and everything else. But it always comes back because it's me. And I'd had an interest in history for a long time. I'd also had an interest and a belief that there is something else going on since I was a knee high to a grasshopper, and the two of them just in my sort of, well, it was probably in my late 30s I started to realize, hang on, these two are linked. There's a link here, and that's where the sort of like the, I suppose, the eureka moment came, and I started sort of branding myself almost as a paranormal historian.
Do you feel that, I mean, obviously, since Edgar Allan Poe, there's always been an interesting in the macabre and the
Mm-hmm.
paranormal. Do you feel that there has been a real awakening in the last 10 years, possibly?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, if before I started doing proper investigating, which was relatively recently, to be perfectly honest, I can even tell you the story of how I realized you can do
Yes, please do.
investigate. Okay.
Please do.
So I had my children quite, what people will say, quite late, and I've had my first at 36 and my youngest when I was 40. And I was doing a night feed with my youngest, and anyone who's done night feeds know that you just try and get them done, and he wouldn't settle, and because he was
Oh,
very
night
little.
feeds as far as children. I was thinking, let
Yes.
me see, what is a night feed? It's
No,
a
night feed.
child.
Baby waking
Yeah,
up. And
baby.
he wouldn't settle, and because he was in a crib in our room, I took him downstairs. There is a reason to this story. I took him downstairs to try so he didn't wake my husband up, because he was getting up for work, and didn't wake our other son up in his bedroom. And I was just going through, and he was taking ages to settle, so I was just going through channels on the television at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I stumbled across this program, and I could not understand to begin with what the guys were saying. They were American. It was actually the Tennessee Wraith Chasers from a program called Ghost Asylum, who I kind of got like, oh, you can do proper investigations, you can use gadgets. Didn't know this. And so yeah, so the next day I started looking for groups who wanted trainee investigators, knowing that I could bring my sort of knowledge of history and stuff to it. And that's how it started, really. So, and I know I'm jumping forward a bit here, but it was always one of my goals to have some of the guys from the Tennessee Wraith Chasers on my podcast, and I know them now. And yeah, so, and they've been on my podcast a few times, so it was kind of very nice, coming full circle almost, to meet the people who got me really started in this.
But so yours is more this. Okay, I think I know the one you're talking about.
They're proper. I mean, they did Ghost Asylum, and then they did Haunted Towns. I'm not sure, and then they kind of split up, and they've
Yes,
kind of
Ghost
gone the opposite
Asylum. I've
ways.
seen Ghost Asylum.
Yeah. But they're really nice guys. They're, all of them are really, really lovely guys. And
Now,
yeah.
with Ghost Asylums, there
Mhm.
are different kinds of paranormal shows. I've
Mm.
noticed there are like Zach Baggins,
Mhm.
everything's evil,
Everything's
everything,
a demon. Yes.
everything's a demon,
Yeah.
highly dramatic.
Yeah.
I like watching him, but I get kind of frustrated with the demon part of it.
In the UK, we don't really do demons. In the
Well,
UK, we don't. It's not something, it's a very, no disrespect to any Americans, it's a very Americanized concept that
really,
everything is a demon.
really.
I mean, it's the same as what was it? Somebody made a joke recently. It's like, it seems to be, why don't we have ghosts in our basements? Oh, that's right, we don't have basements. So, because we
You
don't,
don't
as
have
a,
basements
not
in the
really,
UK,
not really, not at the
so you
level that
don't
you
have
guys do.
tornadoes and things.
No, no,
Oh,
no, we don't have to
oh,
worry about
okay,
stuff like
okay,
that. Not normally.
okay.
But no, we don't tend to have houses built. Some of the very old houses will have cellars, basements, but in as a rule, no. And it's always a bit of a standing joke that if an American crew comes over here, where exactly are they going to go? Because we don't have a cellar for them to go down into. But no, I mean, I don't believe. I'm on the fence about whether demons exist. I've got a couple of friends who are very, very good demonologists, and we sit and discuss it. But like with a lot of things, I'm open to it, but it's not something that I believe unequivocally
You
as
know,
fact.
as a full-time psychic advisor, I usually work by phone line for New York
Mm-hmm.
and California, but also I do have a studio.
Mm-hmm.
Time to time, I get somebody that says, "My daughter, my granddaughter is acting very evil, or she is acting," and I have to wonder, are we talking about bipolar, which is not demons? This is bipolar, and are you actually, in a sense, making things worse by by communicating to her she may have demons,
Yeah.
or they may have demons. But yes, you're right. Around here, I don't know whether it's because of Zach Baggins or whether it's because of the Salem witch trials or whatever it is. There's a big, heavy emphasis on black magic.
Yeah.
Um, Even some of the serial killers were very highly into demons.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe there are evil spirits,
Right.
but my theory is if someone was evil in real life, in
Yes.
living, they'll be evil in death. They're not going to suddenly become like an angel in death. If they were a really nasty piece of work when they were alive, they're going to be a nasty piece of work when they're dead. And that's where I think and I mean, one of my pet peeves is when where I was doing a Ouija board recently, and somebody came through and she said she was a child, and one of the people watching said, "Oh my God, are you sure it's not a demon?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it doesn't feel evil. I mean, I'm not a psychic, but I am a sensitive, and I didn't feel any kind of, and I'm quite good at with intuition, sensing when walking into a room and you think, I've got to get the hell out of here. This
Psychic
isn't
is
good.
just a word. Psychic is
But,
just a
but,
word.
but you know what I mean? I'm very good at sensing things like that. And I've got people out of a room before, or
Let me ask you,
mm-hmm.
how do you feel about Ouija boards?
I think they're no more dangerous than using spirit boxes or anything else like that when you're asking a spirit to communicate with you. It's just an old fashioned way of doing it. It's an
So
old
you
fashioned
don't
type of
feel that a
telephone.
portal is being created
No.
by, so when that child came through, would that not be, you, or you use it with another person, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that your energies create a portal for a spirit to come through?
I think the right energy allows them to communicate, because
Mhm.
I've seen it before where a couple of people have been doing one and they can't get anything.
Yes, and
Meal,
that I think you have
they
to
can
be
block
with the
it.
right person. It's
Yeah, you
just like
people can
love.
block it. Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
friendship. You have to
yeah,
have that right energy, or else there's nothing.
yeah. I've seen people. I term it blocking it when I'm talking to people, because that's the easiest way to explain it. They can block the almost like the phone call, so to speak.
Yes.
And I'll come in and use my sort of, I don't speak when I'm doing it, but mentally I'm trying to unblock the line for them so they can get some communication going. But it's just something I've mastered doing over the last few years. I did used to think Ouija boards, talking boards, whatever you want to call them, were evil. I did used to believe that, but I have done so much reading up on them, talking to people people like Robert Murch and people like that who are historians in it. And now I'm of the feeling it's no more dangerous than opening up using a spirit box or anything like that, where you're asking the spirit to communicate directly with you. I think anything can be dangerous if you I mean, one of the jokes, Courtney Emrock was saying it to me recently. She said she loves listening to me when I've done EVPs or seance, calling out seancey type sessions, because I'm always so polite. I always say please and thank you. I always treat whatever's talking to us as though they're sitting next to me anyway, like they are a living person, like I'm talking to you. So I'll crack a joke. I won't ever laugh at them. If anything, I'd laugh at myself, but I want them to laugh. I want them to be involved. I want them to be part of the group rather than a performing monkey, to be quite honest. And whether that stands me in good stead, I don't know. I genuinely, because nobody really knows, but I'm to this day, I've had experiences where I've kind of made sure I am covered in white light and all that kind of thing, because it just
Do
felt
you
a bit.
have a prayer or a some kind of verse or some way to surround yourself, or do you just visualize white light?
Visualization, okay. Pure visualization.
And
yeah.
And what if you get have you ever gone somewhere on an investigation and returned with an energy you did not want?
I haven't ever brought one home to date. I've had one in the back of my car with me, and I told.
Oh, I don't think I'd like that one bit.
No, I saw a face in the back of my car after an investigation, and I did actually
scream.
I mean, no, I didn't actually scream. I was like, "What the hell?" I'm not imagining that. And I kind of told them they had to go back. And
so, how do you do that? That's. I had a very good friend, and still have a very good friend, and we were looking at this wonderful historical building, and somebody says, well, would you like to go into the building and to kind of look at what we're doing as we are renovating it? Mm-hmm. So we went into it, and we were looking around, and I felt the energy was very heavy in there, but they said that often happens in reconstruction.
Yeah.
And the upstairs she took us to was massive, and that's where the energy was especially heavy. I don't say it was dark, it was heavy.
Yeah.
But when we went back home, I was staying the weekend with her. And we were sitting enjoying the moon, and the table started shaking. Mm-hmm. And it was so funny because she's a very religious woman, and I've never seen her act in a way that would be paranormal. But she said, get out of here. And I remember that it stopped and it never came back.
To be fair, that's probably not dissimilar to how I would do it. Maybe not quite as I'll normally start a conversation. And to anyone viewing it, it's a completely one-way conversation. It's not, I mean, with this one, I was pretty sure I knew where they'd come from. And I had felt someone following me around. And you feel like the breath on the back of your neck, and you can feel someone's looking at you, can't you? Mm-hmm. And I just said to them, you can't follow me. You've got to go back. I'm really sorry. I promise I will be back to visit you again. But you can't stay with me. I'm really sorry. You really must go back. And they did. So I tend to be as polite like that. The only time I've ever got angry with whatever it is that we're just communicating with was I was investigating a fort, and it was a public event, and this one room, it was kind of where they'd store all the weapons and stuff. When people walked past it, men were fine, but every woman who walked past it seemed like she'd got punched in the solar plexus.
Really?
Yeah, every woman. And I didn't know this, and I got the ooh, like something had just
really
hit. And it was this young guide who said to us, he goes, it's funny, all women complain that they feel like someone just thumped them in the solar plexus whenever they walk past. And I sort of made a note to go and see what was going on in there, because I'm a bit like that. I will stand up to bullies. And anyway, they'd put this young lad in there, this public investigation, and he was getting quite scared. And he said, "Can somebody come and help me? Because I don't know what to do." He was never done it before. And so I went in there with a spirit box and the K2 meters, just to sort of, because he'd never done it before. I thought, it wasn't my investigation, I was a guest, but I thought I'll take a couple of gadgets in. It kind of, when people are doing public ones, it gives them a bit of a taster, all of that kind of thing. And I know that the pros and cons of the gadgets. The minute I walked in this room, I started shaking. And for me, and I can't even duplicate the shaking, it's normally there's energy in there. If I'm like this, I can't physically do it to myself. I just start shaking. And he's like, "You're right, you're right." And I went very, very pale. And I went, "There's a guy standing, he's in that, he hates women." That was the only thing was getting out of him. He hated women. And the next thing is this guy smelt it as well, like sweat and oil. And this fort hasn't been used for 100 years, and we both smelled it, because I said, and I sort of said to myself, I can smell sweat and I can smell hot oil. And he said, "Why can I smell sweat and hot oil?" As I was saying, I'm thinking we're picking up on the same thing here. Anyway, through using the spirit box and getting him to light up the K2, it transpired that this spirit had been based there in the 19th century. His fiance had gone off with another man, and he hated women as a result, and had done ever since. And I got quite, I didn't get sort of, I was more stern with him than angry, like, "Oh, you're a," and all this. I was just like, "You are a bully, you shouldn't be doing this, this is out of order, you can't hurt everyone who comes
You
past."
acted like a stern mom.
Yeah. Not every woman would have done that to you. It's not fair to punish all of us. You've got to stop. And he was sort of yelling back almost through the like at me. And this young lad by me said, "The room keeps changing." He said, "I feel quite scared right now." And I'm still shaking. And then all of a sudden it went peaceful. I stopped shaking. Everything stopped reacting, and the room felt different. And when I had no group who went back then, not so after, and none of the women were affected as they walked past the room. So it could have been I got my point across to him. But that's the only real time I've ever got narky with the spirit. I tend to try and treat them. I'm not one of those, "Oh, come and move the glass." It's more of he's moving that glass over there, you can't do this one, come on, more sort of competitive thing. But I don't agree with calling them out as in being rude to them. I don't agree with. But if this one was hurting every single woman who walked past, and
But
that's not on.
Penny, I would ask you this. As investigators, you are basically visiting someone's home without asking.
Yeah.
And so the reaction from some people, if there were people investigating their home without asking, would be angry.
Yes.
Now, wait, bear with me here. So what I'm saying is, by investigating homes that have spirits, and there are some that are quite cantankerous and naughty, and you see some people walking around with white sage and feeling that is helping to take away the energy in a home that is not theirs. I mean, I do it in my studio because it's a way to clear energy for the next visitor.
Yeah.
But in your case, do you feel that using white sage and using the means of energy clearing, Reiki, whatever, do you feel that those things are beneficial to clearing energy or not?
Let me think.
I like your expressions.
I don't know is the honest answer, because I know some people will come in and they'll say the Lord's Prayer and things like that. I'm not religious, so
yes. So to say the Lord's Prayer if you are not religious is a little bit sacrilegious.
Exactly.
So that would be almost an opposite of what you would be
Yeah.
trying to get results for.
I don't know. I've never had a situation where I felt the need to, and I think the whole saging of a place, and I understand why people do it. I don't know if it works or not. I genuinely don't. I have no disrespect for people who do believe in it, same as I don't have any disrespect for people who believe in saying the Lord's Prayer will clear an evil entity out, any of that stuff.
Yours is kind and caring language, kind and caring respect.
Try and find out what's going on. Try and find out what is going on with them and why they're doing what they're doing. I'll give you an example. Now, the Fort one, that was different. He was coming at me all guns blazing the minute I walked in there. If I'd been kind and caring, I think I would have probably
smacked.
You got it. So, and the fact he'd already hit me in the solar plexus when I walked past, I wasn't going to be nicey. He was one of those, he felt like one of those people you had to goad him into a fight almost to get him to admit what the issue was. Does that make sense? So like sometimes some people, they almost have to
there
cry.
There are some people at work that are like that.
Exactly. Now, I'll give you another example. We went on holiday, my family and I, about 3 years ago now, to Normandy in northern France, because we wanted to show my sons where the D-Day beach is and go through the World War II history and all that, which I think is really important.
Right.
And we stayed in this amazing farmer's cottage that was about 600 years old. And very early on, and I always walk into a building and say, oh, it's nice to meet you, thank you for having me, all that kind of thing, because in case there is someone
whenever
listening,
you're into a
I'm going to be
hotel room or something like that, you mean?
I'll talk to the room.
My goodness.
My family have got, they know I'm a bit bonkers like that. They don't judge me anymore. Anyway, so I did it with this house, but it was weird because upstairs felt very peaceful, and there was an entity upstairs, because I woke up one night, I dozed off, and I think it was the next day, because we'd had a very long journey. I dozed off and I woke up feeling someone stroking my arm, and there was no one there. And also I think the following night I woke up, because my husband and I were in these twin beds, and I looked over and I could see a shadow leaning over him, like checking him. And my husband, who's fast asleep, says to me, who's watching me in his sleep?
Oh my goodness.
And so I say the shadow and I locked eyes is the only way I can explain it, but I kind of in my head said, we're fine, thank you for letting us stay here, and it disappeared. So but then downstairs at night, which is where the toilet was, it almost felt like you didn't know what you were stepping into as you stepped off the last stair. It felt very, very dark in more ways than one. And I think it was on about the fourth day there. We'd spent the whole day there because it had a beautiful, like half an acre of land around it. It was absolutely beautiful. No roads, just farmland. It was stunning. And it was in the evening. The boys had gone to bed. We were sitting there watching some television, and my husband said, it feels weird in here tonight. And it does. It almost felt like I couldn't focus. It was almost like I was looking at everything without my glasses on. That's the only way I could explain it. And then all of a sudden, my son's bag, which had been sat on this table for half the day, just got swept off the table and flew to the floor.
Is this in the same place?
In this cottage in Normandy.
Okay, yeah. In the cottage in Normandy.
Yeah, it was like someone had swept it with their arm. And we both sat there and went, yeah. And we had things like lights would be coming on and off. The washing machine got turned on. Nobody had been in. I hasten to add, nobody had been in. Things were happening. And I think after
that would be called poltergeist.
Potentially, yeah. So me being an investigator, the first thing I'm doing is I'm checking there's no earthquakes there. There was no road where any heavy goods vehicles could have caused a vibration. The bag didn't just fall, it flew. It was like someone had just swept it with their arm. And so we went to bed, and it'd
be hard to go to bed after that, I would think.
Oh, it was like go to sleep and pretend it's not happening. Yeah. And the next day my husband said, you're sorting this. I was like, what do you want me to do? And he goes, you're going to talk to whoever's upset we're here. You're sorting it, because I can't spend we had another 10 days to go. And so he left me on my own. He took the kids out to the supermarket and left me on my own in the house for about 4 hours. And I just walked around chatting and sort of saying, look, thanks ever. We really do appreciating you letting us share your home. If you want to tell me your name, you can. And just sort of.
Did you use your spirit box for that?
No, I didn't have it. I didn't take it with me. I tried to have time off, if that makes sense. When I'm
okay,
because otherwise
but you can't, because energy is something that doesn't leave us.
Yeah. So I do try and rely on my own sort of sense, if you like. And the thing was, we found this photo, and I'd been picturing this woman. It was a woman. I could picture it was a woman, and I found her in the photo, who it was.
Wow.
And she'd lived there around First World War time, early 1900s, sorry. And it was her. And I'm sure it was her. And when after I'd spent that time on my own in the place, chatting, saying thank you ever so much, we are respecting your home, it's lovely, thank you so much for letting us stay, thank you for doing the washing for me. I was trying to sort of be as polite as I could be.
Thank you for doing the washing for us.
Yeah, putting the washing machine on. Yeah, putting the washing machine on.
Oh, interesting.
Just trying to be polite and friendly, and hoping that she understood the English and that it translated somehow. Nothing happened after that. It went quiet. And I say
nice.
nothing. We had the odd thing, like we'd come back after a day out and all the lights would be on that we'd switched off, little things like that, but nothing as bad. And when I was locking up, my husband had got everyone in the car, and I was locking up to leave. The day we went home, I did say again, thank you ever so much for letting us stay. We'd love to come back again. And there was a voice in my head that just went, you can. And it left it at that. So
isn't that true? Do you feel sometimes those voices in your head are their voices? Because I've noticed,
like when I see
visions.
Yeah. I see visions in my head as well sometimes when I'm trying to channel. And it's like, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a medium, and she said, the visions you see, I said, it's like, it's different to my imagination. I can't explain it. It's almost like it's in technicolor rather than just a thought fleeting. It fixes, it sits there. And yeah, so my belief is that I placated whatever it was. But so yeah, I do believe some people sage it works, but I do sometimes wonder as well how much of it is because mentally they believe it, their mental abilities are helping that as well, whereas whatever works.
Then Penny, I guess we're getting right back to prayer, meditation, and visualization. Is it the prayer? Is it the meditation? Is it the saging? Or is it that the sense of well-being, that you are protected? Because as they say, fear attracts the bad, the negative. And some of these things I see reenacted on television, I'm just almost laugh because they're so, it's not the investigators, it's when they try to reenact a young girl in a home with a knocking on the door, and it becomes louder and louder and louder, and it's all very fun and scary. But I admire your fearlessness.
Thank you.
Have you been that way since a little girl?
Not about life. I'm not fearless when it comes to life in general. I'm quite an anxious person. But when it comes to the dead, I don't believe they want to hurt me. So why would they? My whole theory is, when people think that just because if it is a ghost, to use a normal term that a lot of the general public would use,
right,
why assume they want to hurt you? When I'm taking like public on an investigation, and I've got, oh my god, they're going to hurt me, they're going to do this, going to do that. So okay, when you're walking down the street and you're seeing all these living people, well, you think they're living, may not be, but you think, how many of them genuinely want to hurt you? And they'll say probably none. Exactly. So what makes you think that everything that's paranormal is there to hurt you? If I don't particularly want to hurt anyone. I don't see someone think, right, I'm going to hurt you. I've never met you before, but I'm going to hurt you. I might hurt someone if they hurt one of my children. I might hurt someone if they hurt my husband. But a complete stranger, why would I want to hurt them? I might, if they came in my house, as you said, tell them where to go and be quiet. The hell are you doing in my home? But as you said, that's not, most people would be like that, dead or alive. So
do you think vacant buildings become beacons for energies that weren't in that home?
That's a good question. I think something has to attract them there. I don't think it's the fact it's abandoned that might attract them there. I am very much I don't believe in haunted objects, but I do believe in an object can be a magnet for an
Well, you have
energy.
I saw your poster that said haunted antiques.
I
Tell
did a
me what.
talk. Yeah, I did a talk at a place called the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre, which is in near Leicester in the UK, and it's a place that was set up. I think Neil set it up about 4 years ago, and it's got items in that people think have been haunted. He won't say whether they are or not, but he uses it as a research centre for people studying the paranormal. So they can use these items, they can touch these items, they can do seances, they can do
Who
whatever.
determined that they were haunted?
The people who donated them
Okay.
felt that they were haunted. Now, he has a brilliant on-site medium called Jane Rowley who works with him. He won't say that he thinks necessarily they're haunted or not, but people have thought they were and wanted to get them out of their house. Is basically where it sort of goes to.
Do you have little girls?
No, boys.
Boys. Okay. What do you think of this? I had dolls when I was little, some. I wasn't much of a girly girl, but I do remember I had one or two. And all of a sudden, the last 4 or 5 years, everybody has been saying that all dolls are beacons for wicked spirits and naughty spirits that want to open their eyes and stare at you in the bed.
My face tell you my answer to that.
Good.
Oh, if you saw the amount of dolls that the Haunted Antique Centre has had donated to it, it is obviously a trend at the moment.
It's a trend.
It's a trend, I personally believe. I do think there's a few that have got, when you talk, can't remember the full story, but there's one called Robert the Doll that was about 100 years ago that the guy created for his son, I think, and weird things happen. I do think it's a trend that some people have jumped on. I don't think the doll itself is haunted, but like I say, I think it could be a magnet for an energy that identifies with it. So if I give you an example of something like that. So my mum and dad's next door neighbour's house, 500-600 years old, and my husband and I were around there for drinks one night when I was visiting my parents, and I was kind of chilling out. So I tend to find I can visualize more when I'm chilling out a bit. And I said to them, I keep seeing a woman standing there. She looks like an old-fashioned wet nurse from like the 1700s, 1800s.
Sure.
And she's very smiley. She's very happy. She cares about you guys and everything else. And they were like, where is she standing? And I walked over and there was this lovely table, like really antique table on the floor. And I was, she's standing about here. And the woman whose house it was went white. And I was like, what's the matter with you? And she goes, that table you're standing next to? She goes, that was a Victorian baby bath. And I'd seen a wet nurse with a baby.
Oh.
Yeah. So I do think spirits can be attracted to an item and therefore follow that item. And if they like where the item's landed, they might stay there, even if the item
becomes like their own personal trailer.
So that's where I think so if something goes into an abandoned building, it could be that something's been placed in that building and they've kind of followed it almost like a magnet. Obviously it's all theory. I've never really tested these.
I used to be very much into antiques. And I'm from the era of the old hippie generation, where we of course rebelled against all things material and went to the Amish colonies and the places where handmade old antiques were, and rocking chairs with faces in them and things like that. And I remember at that time, there were places that I went to that seemed to have peculiar energy, but I also didn't associate it. The wind has really picked up around here, with hauntings. And slowly but surely I started to eliminate some of those antiques, and now it's almost to the point where if I get an antique, I will air it in a garage or outside for 2 days or a week. But I just wondered what your thoughts on that were.
I don't think a doll could be. I don't think a doll can be possessed. but I do think a spirit can attach themselves. And knowing children, they don't always want you to play with their doll. It's theirs.
I have another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that houses that, I have a friend, used to be my co-host at my show, is purchasing a house right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about how it seemed as if this one house was waiting for him.
Yeah.
And I always say that when you live in a neighborhood, the same house attracts the same kind of people. You'll have the people that are always getting in trouble, or the
Mm-hmm.
people that are always gardeners, or the people that are always educated, or the people that are partiers, and it seems as if the energy of those houses does attract a specific kind of people. So here's my question. I have been attracted to an abandoned mansion in a small town, and I just felt this extremely strong call energetically that I was to clear the gardens because it has statues that go back to another century and things.
Mm-hmm.
So I took my power saw and I went out there and I cleared all the trees and the things that were there, and started hanging pots of flowers
Mm-hmm.
in the yard. The house kind of spooks me out. I don't know why. It's from the Napoleon architecture era.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been one of those houses that was a hospital and it was a restaurant and it was all these wonderful things, but people always leave it.
Yeah.
Anyway, as I cleared out the gardens, I went home that night and I woke up to a garden party. Women laughing, men, ho, ho, ho. And I thought, well, I must have a lot. I'm really into the white noise of fans. And so I thought it must be the white noise of the fans. But then my husband lurched up and ran to the door and said, who the hell is in our house? And that's when I thought, okay, I brought something back with me.
Yeah. You bought a replay or something, like almost like a replay in time
A
back.
hologram of a
Mm.
garden party or something.
Yeah.
Because when I opened up, I found all these secret pathways and everything,
Wow.
and it was just so I just wondered how you felt about if that came back with me, how things must come back with you.
Okay, so I would have said what you did was you use what's called trigger theory, or Singapore theory, trigger. So by clearing the garden, you triggered a replay of an event.
Okay, I got it. Because that's
Um,
the only time it ever happened. It's just that one night.
I mean, trigger theory. I wrote about trigger theory in my second book, A Haunted Experiment, because it's something
Oh
I think is fascinating.
wow.
I love using triggers on things, and they can be something as simple as a cup from the area that you want to communicate with. I mean, it can be very simple, or it can be bigger, like you did. So you triggered a replay, an event. Now, what obviously, because we don't know how this all communicates, we don't know how it travels. It could be you linked into that because you created the trigger. So but then I would also say what I was getting as you were telling me the story was that maybe in a past life you were like one of the gardeners or one of the groundsmen, which is why you wouldn't have liked the house, because you wouldn't have been allowed in the house. You would have lived in the grounds, and if you would have gotten in a lot of trouble for going in the house as a groundskeeper. So that was kind of the
That's interesting
visualization.
because I know a medium that said, well, he said he thought that I brought home an elemental that was
Okay.
confused by the fact that I was a gardener at one time in the garden and just came home. So that may be why the house feels like such a no-no to me.
Yeah, you
And
wouldn't have
that
been allowed in it back in the day.
but then
So
I had a dream
mm,
where I was out in the garden and a very large woman's head lifted slowly out of the garden, and her face was covered in dirt. But she had a very friendly face with kind eyes. And she
mhm.
looked at me like she was trying to figure out why I was there and who I was. And then her
Mm,
head slowly lowered back into the ground. And I thought I wasn't scared, and I didn't necessarily think it was a dead person,
mm,
but it was something, definitely an
yeah.
energy of.
Yeah. So
So
that could be why you triggered an event. You, by doing that act, you triggered a replay. Because obviously they would have tended to the garden before they had a garden party. So
right.
that could have been what it was. Why it followed you home, I have no idea. But
Mm-hmm.
it would seem to me that you do have some. I do believe people have links to certain buildings. I mean, I've got certain buildings that other people go into, and it scares them. Whereas me, I sit there and go, you could leave me here all night. It wouldn't bother me. I feel quite at home here. And yet the reverse, that I have some buildings I go into and I think, no, I don't like this here. Do not leave me on my own here. And other people are like, it's fine. So I do believe we do have, yeah. And like when you go around a friend's house, some friends' houses you walk into and you feel like you've never not been there before, and yet it's a brand new home. And
Right.
yet other ones you find very hard to sort of, even though it's one of your best friends who you've known for years, who, you have no qualms about kicking your shoes off, curling up on the sofa. Do you know what I mean? You
Yes.
still feel that
Kind of
I'm
like
not
what we were
welcome.
talking about, Ouija boards,
Mm-hmm.
that you can only, people that are on Ouija boards have to have a connection,
Yeah.
just like we have to feel that connection
Yeah.
in houses.
Mm-hmm.
And, and, I just feel that that is something that I kind of wanted him to listen to this show again so he could
Mm.
kind of maybe understand his connection with this house.
Mm.
Um, what is coming up for you?
Well, I do podcasts now on a monthly basis. So I've got a new podcast out early September, which I don't tell people what it's going to be about until I launch it.
Okay.
I'm in the nearly finished writing my fourth book, which will be on a place called
And that's
Bosworth Hall.
triggers on triggers, you
No,
said?
no, I wrote about triggers in my second book. Um,
Oh, okay.
so
The
I've written
third,
three books so far. The
and
first book was called My Haunted History, and that was basically like 10 episodes of my show, I suppose you could say, where I look at the history of the place, and then for me personally, some of my experiences when I've investigated them, try and link the two. The second book was called A Haunted Experiment. So I took three of the most common paranormal experiments that people run, dug into the history of the experiment, because everything's got a history, dug into the history and how they came about and everything else, and then tried to recreate them in three different locations. And then my third book, which is the one that's currently out, was all about the history and an investigation of a school in Hitchin, which is kind of about 40 miles north of London. And it was what was known as the British schools, which was a type of school that came up in the very, very early 1800s to educate the poor, because the poor didn't get an education because they couldn't afford it. And that's a place where every time I go there now, it's like going home. It's if I've got some kind of connection to it, I don't know, but
wow.
that was one that literally, as soon as I stepped on the threshold, I had an amazing experience, and it was my way of sort of thinking, yeah, I think the school does want me to write about it, and the actual museum asked me to do the book. So I'm currently working on my fourth, which is about this place called Bosworth Hall in a place called Market Bosworth. And that's a building that's had a lot of different things. It's been a hospital, it's been a hotel, it's been a hall, all
And
those kind of things.
what is the,
Sorry?
do you feel you have a connection there?
No. In all
No.
honesty, no. That's one that not everywhere I go, I feel I have a connection. Bosworth Hall just fascinated me. I did a podcast on it a few years ago, and the story of the place, and one of the people who lived there was, I would say, the ultimate in original feminism. She was amazing. And I wanted to write a bit about her anyway. And then this sort of opportunity came up to actually do a book on the hall itself, and could do I'm doing my final investigation there on Halloween with the guys from Haunted magazine. So yeah, so that's the current one. And then once that's out in early 2022, I believe, I start working on book 5.
So you have to have a writer in you that must
Yes.
write. Yes, I'm kind of the same way.
I'm a feature writer for Haunted magazine as well.
That
So
is awesome.
thank you. So their new magazine's out now, I believe, for pre-orders. So I do a feature in that called Not So
Haunted
Horrible Histories.
magazine. Is there a
Mhm.
is the website for that by
I
chance?
think that is just Haunted magazine. It's people Google Haunted magazine. It's a British publication, but it
Uh-huh.
Barnes and Noble stock it in the US.
Okay.
So yes, and I'm one of their feature writers. So um, it's a feature called Not So Horrible Histories. And yeah, I write blogs for my personal page, Haunted Histories. I do sort of little bits on my page as well, so people can snippets of information.
I saw the little blog squares on the
Yeah.
bottom with your different stories. Looked very interesting.
Thank you. What I want is for people to learn to look into things themselves. If someone ever says to me, how do you research that? How do you find that? Where did you go? I'll always tell them I'm not one of those who it's my knowledge, you can't have it. Because even though I'm not religious, I'm very much in the whole sort of give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish kind of thing. And you know, I want people to think that's an interesting story. I'm going to read more of that. I'm going to go and look that up. I'm going to and get that love of sort of finding out information into people, because it is fascinating. And so yes, that's really what's going on with me.
So the things that I have come away with before I end this show that I'm going to remember most: have a nice conversation with the spirits within your house. Don't yell at them. If you go to a hotel room and it's nice to speak to the spirits as you come in, because no one wants to be crashed. And the third was, yes, dolls can be triggers, but so can other antiques. And fourth was that Ouija boards and houses and things like that need to be respected, and that America is the home of demons.
Seems to be. Sorry, and that, I don't want to offend anyone, but it does seem to be.
And that the UK is more into the spirit. And there was a UK paranormal show I saw, a group of people. I don't remember the title of it. There was 2 women, I think, and there was 3 men, maybe. And it was, they went into a building and they sat at a table, and all of a sudden it started going, blah, 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 blah. I guess that would be the same as table tipping.
Yep. Yeah, we do that. Yeah, we do that. Yeah.
Table tipping. Yeah. Well, that's something I wished I would have talked about you more with, because it's almost time to go. And I just want to thank you so much, Penny. And
you're very welcome.
I appreciate you taking the time. What time is it there?
Oh, it's only 7 o'clock in the evening. You're fine.
Oh, good. All right. I didn't see one yawn.
No. And I haven't even got any coffee.
Quiet.
My husband is well trained. He knows the rules. Okay. He's a good lad.
Well, thank you, honey. And I appreciate it. And have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.